On the other hand, I have New Age, where I have to create a 360-degree experiential brand, which should be available on the palm of your hand. So you are seeing changes happening, but they are vastly different in both the worlds. But I also find that people need to reach out to all the government funds that are being created. The government is doing stuff to encourage women entrepreneurs. There's a fantastic tax haven that they have created, which is 3 years that you don't need to pay tax if you are a women entrepreneur. Corporates are changing their policies. They are their maternity leave, the sabbaticals that they take. They're creating creches. So NGOs are reaching out, creating funds, and trying to encourage women to work. We're far from being able to have, to say that yes, women empowerment is happening across cities. But today, 10% of the workforce of entrepreneurs are women. S&P report, the index says that S&P 500 index says that there are 14.2% women in corporates. All of these are significantly higher than what it was. So you are seeing the change happening. And I believe that that's encouraging.
Very good. No, it sounds like the right steps are taking place.
But very slowly and very
slowly.
yeah.
You brought up a good point about straddling two worlds, and I think that's interesting in how in certain societies you have different facets. And in considering in the Indian society being more patriarchal, perhaps, Mahika, let's go with you. Have you found that there's been times in business, in the workplace, that you have not been taken seriously because you are a woman?
I think being a woman has never been a deterrent for me, maybe because I speak my mind and I know what I want and I know the rights and wrongs. It's very imperative today to be cognizant about what is right. You should know the laws, and we know that today. But having said that, there are a lot of women who've had a lot of challenges, and they definitely, it's a patriarchal society. I mean, you look at people saying women are bad drivers, women are a woman who reaches the boardroom she slowly has to retort because there's lack of business acumen being discussed behind her. And I feel women always go through, I mean, I know so many people who can't even make basic decisions of life because their men in their lives do that for them, whether it's their family or their men who are in there. So I feel it is definitely a patriarchal society. And we are fortunate that we know what's right and wrong, and therefore maybe we are not governed by it, but there are a lot of women who need to be educated, and therefore it comes to the power of educating them and getting them in the workforce. So once that comes together, then I think the shackles of patriarchy will slowly loosen out.
Very good insight. Now I think that's interesting about how you're comfortable speaking up and speaking your mind, but you think about the women who aren't in that situation and have not had that empowerment or perhaps the support by the parents, as you've mentioned. Okay, very good. Kiran, do you agree with that?
Well, I absolutely agree to one thing. Yes, we in the metros, and we're blessed. We have a lot of support. I have a lot of support personally from my family, and my fiance is here to support me. When I travel to places like Lucknow, Raipur, and I happen to speak to my guests and guide them for certain things like wellness and beauty services, I actually get an answer that I need to ask my husband to pay up for a package like this. So that surprises me. I feel sad about it, and I really want to call those men, and I at times have done that to counsel them that this is a part of their life and they need to grow out of this, and that is important for us to, as Nisha said, we need to move out and actually start educating the men that the society needs to move.
It's true, and hopefully that deserves a round of applause. And hopefully that education, and you're absolutely right about this isn't just about educating the women and the girls, but also educating the men, and hopefully those kinds of initiatives we're starting to see even from the primary school level here in India. Now, Reshma, let's go with you. Now, in this patriarchal society, have you had situations like that where you're not taken seriously?
I think, fortunately for me, I haven't really experienced it. I have worked with corporates where a woman was encouraged to speak her mind. I have an equal relationship in my marriage, and I hope to be able to create a similar scenario for my daughter, but I see this happening around us, and you see it at every single level. It could be a friend, it could be your mate, it could be various people who will not in India make a decision without asking their male counterpart. However, I would like to know in this room, which are the women, if you can just put up your hand, who have after marriage taken your husband's name. I'd like to also now ask the women who have kept their maiden name and taken their husband's name, or the single women who are about to do that. And this is what I'm talking about. Times are changing.
Yes.
Times are changing, and the entire mindset is changing. So slowly but surely we're getting there. The number of women that we have in the parliament today is far greater than we had a few years back. In 1995, we had, in 1970, we had no global CEO which was a woman in any Fortune 500 company. Today, we have 26. So it's changing. It's slowly changing in the patriarchal world, but it would be myopic of me to say that we don't live in it.
Right.
It is a truth. But like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see.
And I think one of the great starting points is what you mentioned about having more women in parliament, and that's
Yes.
precisely it. And that's where you start seeing changes, is when you have more women in politics. So hopefully then we'll have more regulations about getting a certain percentage of women on boards, corporate boards, and little by little. I'm also raising 2 small daughters, and so I also like to see the differences of when I was younger and how they're being raised these days. I think we play obviously a very critical and fundamental role. Nisha, your experience.